Hey everyone, welcome back to our series for Web3 Marketing. In the first 3 lessons, we went over what sets Web3 marketing apart from Web2 marketing, who the primary audiences are in this space, and the basics of paid marketing for Web3. If you missed them, don't worry, you can head over on this channel to watch those 3 first. Today we'll dive into community growth. I think just about everyone knows that Web3 is one of the most community-centric spaces. So mastering how to build that community is one of the best skills you could have. And don't forget to stay tuned and subscribe. There are 2 more videos coming. For community, we'll cover why community matters so much in Web3, what a growth curve looks like, think network effect, the incentives that people in Web3 have, and the goals that you can have for your community growth. And finally, we'll touch on how to engage your community for growth. And you'll be learning all of this from me. I'm Carly, a social media manager and community manager/writer. You can connect with me on socials and find me on Discord. So, yes, everyone in Web3 is always talking about community, but you might be wondering why. That's because this space decentralizes control to the community and its members. It is important for diving into the future of this space and contributing to it. So community drives innovation. The community tells you what they want and need, all so that you can develop better products and services. And in this way, they drive adoption. Because in Lesson 2, we talked about friends and family referrals as a channel for marketing. This is really important. Your community can massively increase your reach. They also contribute to your narratives or community story. The more people talk, the better idea you have about what matters to them. From that, you can learn what narratives work, and this also impacts the overall sentiment around your project. All of this is key in determining token prices and investments. If sentiment is bad, then people typically will try to exit your project. This drives down prices. But if you have a strong and motivated community, your sentiment goes up and your token price and the number of people who want it buy in. And of course, there are trends. While it takes a large community to impact token prices, this takes nearly the whole Web3 community. But they don't just drive the space, they also contribute and work in the space. Investing is not just money, but also time. So often you'll find community members directly contributing to projects. This is most common in 2 regards. The first is governance. So with DAOs like Uniswap, community members can literally vote on the future direction of the project. They also contribute to organic growth. This can take many forms, such as when community members write blogs, post on their social media, or simply talk about your project. But the bottom line is that community impacts the entire ecosystem from a project level all the way up to the trends and development of the entire space. In fact, if you think about it, without the very first community springing up on Bitcoin forums, this space probably wouldn't even exist at all. But just because community is essential to the space doesn't mean that they've come built in with every project. In fact, you have to put a lot of time and effort at the beginning, and it may even take quite a while before it feels like it's paying off. This is the growth curve. Essentially, you have to put in a lot of effort and resources at the beginning, but the bigger you get, the easier it is to continue to grow. This is because of the network effect. Basically, every community member has their own network, and the more people in your community talking about your community, the bigger overall network reach you have. So keep in mind, initial effort will be bigger. You have to invest time, money, and resources into marketing your community, especially if you want to grow an extremely large community. There are a few key factors that will also dictate how hard or easy it is to build your community. The 2 main are product and token. So if your product is needed and easy to use, it will be far simpler to build a community. But also if you have a well-established competitor for the same product, you may face some challenges. And for token, the price matters. But also, is it a governance token? And can people interact with your token in different ways? And then there are external factors to take into account, like the overall state of the market. Unfortunately, anything in a bear market is typically harder. Finally, community campaigns are a great way to counter these difficulties. Community campaigns are activities designed to attract new community members or engage your community. They can be used to offset product or token downsides by providing alternative benefits to the community. And these benefits can also be used to attract new members, especially if you design a campaign for immediate kickbacks for members. The best campaign will go beyond this, though, to try to incentivize people not only to join a community as a passive member, but also to get involved. There are a lot of different types of community campaigns, and most are endless number of things that you can do if you are creative enough. But in general, every campaign requires these 7 ingredients. The first is promotion. Marketing to make sure that the right people know about the campaign. This is especially important for community growth campaigns because you need to promote events outside of your existing community. Next is budget. Both for incentives and for marketing, you need to know your budget so that you don't go overboard. Incentives, or the draw for people to participate or join your community. This can take a variety of forms, from monetary to social interaction to resources or knowledge that people want access to. Mechanics, so how people will flow through your campaign. What steps do they need to take? And if you are only rewarding people who perform certain actions, like following your Twitter and joining your Discord, how will you track that? The next is tools. Especially as you get to bigger communities, you need tools to handle more members, automate activities and tracking, and to get more interesting engagement. Content is the next one, to explain and promote your campaign. You'll also want content that can funnel people deeper into your community or get them to respond and engage immediately. And of course, people, to help design, engage, and run the campaigns. Each campaign will have different demands though. Some will require less resources, and others might be much more demanding. So there is an alignment chart that breaks down some of the more common campaigns. You can get a quick picture of how much effort they take versus how much value they actually provide. So for example, you can see the difference between a simple airdrop and a retroactive airdrop. Both are fairly low, although they can be expensive. But the retroactive airdrop is a lot higher value for participants because it rewards the people who have been there the longest. But in general, you'll want to think about 2 things from 2 different perspectives: participants and your own project. One is how much effort, time, and money has to be put in, and 2 is how much value is returned. Based on this, you can start to evaluate if a campaign will be compelling from a community member standpoint, and if the returns that you'll see will be worth the investment. Keep in mind that you might want to run a few campaigns to test what actually works. This is true for both existing community and new target audience that want to join your community. And of course, keep in mind the market will affect this. Another thing that you'll want to keep in mind is that there are 2 very broad categorizations of community: belief motivated and money motivated. Neither type of community is bad, and there are different communities that have both types of members, especially the larger communities. But having a clear picture of motivations will enable you to build better campaigns. That being said, money-motivated communities typically grow faster, provided you have the right monetary incentives. These are easier to come by in a bull market when just about everybody is earning. But if you want to hand over the entire operations of your project to the community, you may need to invest time in building a belief-motivated community. That's because they tend to be in it for the long haul. So even though market downturns, they will still be there. We can also tie this back to lesson 2, where I talked about crypto audiences. Most crypto natives fall into this belief-motivated category, while crypto enthusiasts are often at least initially more motivated by money. So, with the right incentives, what can you actually achieve? 99% of the time, you'll be able to hit numbers, whether this is on Twitter, Telegram, or a bit harder on Discord. But you can also use campaigns to keep a community active, find people who are the most interested and invested, get key feedback, promote your project through user-generated content, add people to your beta testing who are somewhat vetted, and hopefully through this, receiving more feedback so your project can continue to improve. Or you can create an external team like ambassadors who will create their own content around your project and make sure it continues to be talked about. But just as there are almost endless types of campaigns, there's a wide array of goals and outcomes you can aim for. In fact, there are even some secondary goals. We've listed these as obvious because they're actually much harder key performance indicators to measure. But some of the great side effects, so to speak, of community campaigns can be converting bypassers into community members. So maybe your posts about an internal community event are seen by someone on Twitter, and it's interesting enough that they jump into your community. You can also convert community members into fans, so creating a much stronger sense of loyalty in your community members. Usually this happens when you provide value beyond what they're expecting. And that actually goes into the next point of creating a bond between community members and the project. But with this one, I tend to think about it more when a dialogue and a bit of give and take starts to happen. So when community members start to convert to collaborators on the project, and give some time and work to continue to develop it. Gain social clout and free media attention. A big, buzzy community makes noise. It makes you look good, and in turn, the people in your community. So at some point, it becomes cool to be a part of, and this can gain coverage by some crypto native sites if your community is doing something big enough or something entirely new. And of course, all that bonding, providing value, and building loyalty lay the foundation for handing over project ownership to the community. Of course, you can't just magic a DAO into existence. You need to make sure that you're handing it to a group of people who are invested enough to put time into the project and make sure the right choices for it. So, usually you need to provide value to the community first before they'll invest this type of time. Many of these are partner goals with some of the easier to measure outcomes, but definitely investing in a good community campaign can have massive benefits. So I know that this class is primarily about community growth, but the only way to grow a community is if there is something to do once people are there. So what are some growth-oriented engagement strategies? In general, you'll always want to make sure to do a few things, no matter the medium. First is being consistent. Even think back to what I was saying about narratives for paid marketing in lesson 3. Paid only works if your organic content is already good, so you have to develop strong narratives no matter what. And then be consistent in how you talk about it and how often you talk about it. This will help to make sure that you become known for that one or few things as a leader in this area. Set clear goals. And this goes for just about everything. We've gone through a lot of different primary and secondary outcomes for community campaigns, but when you're setting your goals, it's good to set a few key metrics that you prioritize over the rest. This will make sure your campaigns stay focused and that you don't underperform for all goals because you're aiming for too many outcomes. And finally, be sure to set up and track the conversion funnel of your community. If you're hosting some sort of talk, like a Twitter space or conference, try to see if you can convert attendees who drop by but aren't yet in a tighter community into members. And find a way to follow up with people every so often to retain interest and high participation. These strategies aren't just for projects, though. You can also use them to build a community around a single person, like a founder or a thought leader, especially if that community lives online. But there are a few other things that you'll really want to pay attention to online to foster better engagement. For this, make sure you're working with an outbound platform that will help you reach a new audience. So Twitter is a great place for this. Otherwise, you can look at blogs, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Something that's extremely important is to build a recognizable visual brand. And you can take this even further to have something that aligns with your branding, but has slight visual differences for the community side. This means that as people become accustomed to your branding, they'll know within about a second or two that you're talking about your community before they even read anything. Also, try to put in diverse speakers and community members to make sure that you aren't losing out on growth because people think your community isn't for them. If people see only one type of speaker representing your community, they might not feel like it's a space that they can comfortably join and start talking to people, especially if you want your community to be welcoming. Think diverse. And the other really important aspect, community moderation. Make sure your community rules are clear from the beginning and be sure to enforce at least the minimum so that there's no hate speech or attacking other members in your community because this can quickly spiral out of hand. While the majority of daily community management will happen online, offline spaces are also really powerful for building a name and interest. So many key points for better engagement and conversion can also be used for offline. Try to create memorable moments. So this can be done through a great keynote or a booth if you have some time of creative activity, or of course just good swag. And the great thing about these moments is that they often become shareable. So you'll also likely get some user generated content and may even have a few more converts. Share your brand value and really embody that. This is actually very similar to the narratives and consistency that we talked about previously. But make sure that you don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk. This should be true for all of your project actions, but in person events can stick with people a little bit more. So make sure that your values and the benefits you provide to your community are always clearly communicated in words and actions. And of course, if you build an ambassador team, make sure that you set them up for success. You're equipping these people to represent you so that this will actually benefit you. And it's also about respecting them because they're taking the time to do some work for you. You should support them in the best way possible to make it a good experience and one that will naturally want to rave about. So to recap, community is king in Web3. That's because they drive everything from project governance to where the entire space goes. It's definitely worth the resources. There are 7, I know it's a lot, of key ingredients for community campaigns: promotion, budget, incentives, mechanics, tools, content, and people. And finally, your goals and incentives need to be aligned. You should always set clear and strong goals for yourself at the beginning of a campaign. Then, make sure that the incentives you provide will attract the right audience and give them enough value up front to be compelling. Otherwise, keep being innovative. Community is all about creating engagement and creativity. Just because someone else did a cool community campaign doesn't mean it will be right for your needs. But there are almost endless types of campaigns that you can run. And of course, make sure to subscribe. There are 2 lessons still coming. Next week, I'll cover 2 essential parts of Web3 marketing: partnerships and Web3 influencers. And join our Discord. We have extra resources and people to talk to, including me. And you can check out the events section to see when I'll be holding office hours. I'll see you next week.